Epic Games flew me and 15 other people out to their HQ earlier in the year to play test the new Arenas mode and give some feedback on it. So I want to break down my thoughts on the game mode, talk about some of the discussions we had with the Epic employees and staff and kind of feedback we had on it as well, and also break down a little bit of controversy on Twitter, which is kind of nonsense. Also, if you think my gameplay looks extra trash in this, we were playing on 2K monitors, maxed out settings with no visual audio. It was difficult. Just let me tell you, it was difficult, okay? Give me some slack. So some of the basics of the actual game mode itself is that there's 16 people loaded in, and it is just a box fight style map. Now there's a ton of different, like, I don't know if you want to call it maps at the same time. It's an experience with different maps, areas, arenas, probably arenas, let's be real, that's in the title, that you can load into. And they're of all different shapes. So it's not kind of similar. You're not just going to jump into an empty box fight. There's a lot of ones with different terrain and things like that at the same time. That was 2 months ago, so I don't know if all of these things are going to stay exactly the same, but it's around a minute, maybe 40 seconds, maybe 50 seconds. Each round lasted, and once that round was over, everything would break. So every single build would break, and then the storm damage would tick in. Now, this would also turn into basically a zero build game after that. And the reason for this is just to prevent people just hiding and stalling out the matches. Kind of similar to like how a lot of old box fights play. So you definitely were benefited by just going very quickly and actually trying to win the fight faster. However, that also meant it was quite cheesable, which we'll come back to in the feedback and the discussions that we had later on with Epic. Whoever wins is basically first to get 20 round wins. Now, this is actually relatively fast. I felt like maybe it dragged on a little bit too long. It maybe could have been down from 20. I don't know if they've changed it from 20 at this point, but it was 20 when we were playing it. And really, the faster you finish your round, the faster you get into the next match. Because the way that it works is that you jump into the match and it'll pair every single person up. And then you get into your each individual arena, you do your fight, and then you'll go back into the main hub area. Then when you're in the main hub area, you'll just be paired up with someone roughly around your wins. So there's like internal, I don't want to say skill-based matchmaking or point-based matchmaking into it, but there was some matchmaking to make sure you were around players your level. So there is actually kind of some comeback mechanic. The reason I said that you are benefited by finishing your match faster is because you will then be paired into another 1v1 quicker. So in order to get to like the first 20 wins, if you're just stalling out every single game, other people will get into matches quicker, which means they can overlap you. What I did kind of find out, I don't know if this will still be the same going forward, was that you definitely did get into 1v1s with the same people kind of over and over and over again around your skill level. So I will TBC, actually playing it, if that'll actually still be the case or not. But it's a really cool idea, and I think this kind of tournament style inside of one arena works very, very well for different game modes as well. That's not just box fighting. I'll also pin a comment in here with anything they've actually changed since we've played this, because I'm uploading this at the same time as the thing's gone out, and I don't know what they've changed since then, basically. There's also a bunch of rotating loot pool that you got in there, which I didn't really like too much, but again, we'll come back to that in the feedback later on. It was basically always gone assault rifle, a shotgun, pump. Obviously, you're not gonna, we're not playing this with attack, SMGs, and then a slurpfish and minis. So it's basically a very standard box fighting map with a bunch of different arenas that you can play in. The really cool system to continually keep players over and over. Like the pace of the matches were really good. You kind of kept going, and it was really good kind of fighting and box fighting practice. I think it was much less boring than playing like a normal box fighting map or Peace Control 1v1s or something like that. All right, but the feedback and the discussions that we had with Epic, I think were very, very insightful and very interesting. Obviously, I'm not just going to leak a lot of stuff that they, that they have working on or coming up or anything like that, but I want to just discuss what kind of the general gist of the conversations were and some of the thoughts around the game mode specifically. We talked about some other stuff, but obviously I'm not going to tell you about that. I'm not going to tell you about that, of course. The first one is that the build breaking is very cheesable. So one of the things that I very much so noticed, I'll try and put a clip of it behind me right now, was that when all of the builds break, people on the controller, people on the sticks, definitely had a massive advantage, because as soon as the builds break, you can just wait, because you can see the timer, of course. And as soon as that happens, you can just keep your crosshair on someone and pre-fire them. So basically just wait until the round's over and then hit them. So I felt like that was pretty cheesable. And then you going down to completely zero builds after that. So again, controller players who are good at zero builds definitely had a big advantage in that kind of scenario as well. So it was kind of cheesable, and most people figured that out very, very early on. I don't know if they've changed this mechanic from breaking all of the builds, but some of the feedback that we had was you could, instead of that, just allow all builds to be edited by anyone, like the Architect Pop-Up Cup style. You could have builds break, and then you still have, say, 10 builds remaining, so that it's not just zero build. These were kind of some of the feedbacks we got. I don't know if they've implemented any of that at all, We will see. Like I said, I'll put it in the comment down below. The other piece of feedback that I had was, I mean, there was a couple other things, but I think one of the biggest was just loot pool. I think a game mode like this, where you're really focusing on like close range box fighting style, what shotgun and what loot pool you use is very, very, very important. And a lot of the pumps have very minor differences between them. So say some might have a slightly faster pull-out time or a slightly faster shoot time or whatever it is. And when you're constantly switching between these in every single round, it can be kind of difficult to like get used to it. There were a lot of occasions where I was like taking an edit, shooting, resetting, and editing again. And I thought, say, if I had the iron pump, that I'd be able to shoot a second time. I had a slightly slower pump like the Thunder. I can't remember specifically which one it was, where I was like, oh, I just can't shoot this shot again now. You know, there's a lot of shotguns which have 4 bullets per shot, for example, which weren't that good. And of course, my least favorite was that there's a sentinel pump in there, which does a huge amount of structure damage. You know anything about me. You know, I don't want to play a box fighting map that has a sentinel pump in it, which has a massive amount of structure damage. So I think for a map like this, it's a game mode or an experience like this, it's really important to have the right shotguns in, which was something we gave feedback on. Again, I don't know what the loot pools are right now, but I basically said, give us a normal pump, AR, give us the iron pump, another AR. ARs aren't super important. SMGs, as long as they're not super broken, I'm not too fast. But yeah, I don't know what they put in the game, but that was some of the feedback that was going back. I also think the vision that Epic has with the game mode is also very interesting, because this is definitely the first that, I mean, the first that I've heard of that they do something like this, which is this is an entirely competitive game mode. What they said was there was no public playlist. Again, we'll see if that's actually true or not. I don't know if that is 100% true now that the game mode's been released or not. And there was 2 versions of the actual playlist itself, and the game mode slightly changes dependent. So the first one was that there was the normal ranked, so there's just the general ranked playlist that everyone's going to be playing, and then there was a tournament version of this too. Now, from the discussions, they weren't 100% what they wanted to do with the tournaments at the time, but they're obviously very interested in having tournaments in this mode. It's a competitive game mode. It's very, very interesting. Whether they just do like test tournaments or like higher level stuff, I have absolutely no clue. But they were definitely interested in doing tournaments in this game mode generally, and I think it would work very, very well. So the second one we tested, basically the first half of the day was testing the ranked game mode, and then the second half of the day was testing the tournament game mode. Now, the differences between the two were very minor, but remember what I said earlier about games being over quickly. So, you know, you finish your fight quick, you're going to benefit from that in ranked. That's not how the tournament mode works, because they actually wait for every single round to finish, and then once every single round is finished, then everyone gets put back into another match. So very, very similar from the ranked version that we played, but you just get to be put basically much more evenly. So it's kind of a, you know, if you're against someone who's AFK, for example, which, I mean, in a tournament would kind of be rare, you never know. Or if you're just against someone horrible and you can just wipe them really quickly, you're not benefited from just having a bad pairing as much in a tournament mode as you would be in ranked mode. So I think it's really cool the way that they've ended up doing that. And again, the controversy, I think, would be the final very interesting point we had here, which I think was very funny. And let me find the tweet before I just waffle about it. All right, this is my boy's SBG's tweet. He said, this is a terrible precedent. So this is just when they announced it before. This is a terrible precedent for Fortnite to set. They took one of the most popular creative maps and turned it into their own mode. Creators won't be able to outcompete Fortnite if they decide to produce replicas of the most popular maps. All of this to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Now, we actually had this conversation. So we had this conversation specifically at the event, because the question was posed more, why would people play this mode over Peace Control 1v1s, right? If you play Peace Control 1v1s or 2v2s, then you'll know that game mode is kind of very similar to what this is. So yeah, the conversation, why would you play this over playing, you know, a Peace Control 1v1, something that's already very, very successful? And basically the idea is, the main goal of this was to have somewhere that's from Epic where you can actually practice your fighting. Right now, from every single one of the modes that Epic has ever released, none of them are, I don't want to say none of them are great, but like if you're a player who's not good at builds, you basically don't really have a good place to practice at, right? You can go into reload, where, you know, you're kind of sure you can jump in and die over and over again if you don't know how to build. But if you were literally like a full zero build player and you're like, hey, I want to get into builds and learn how to do it, this is a much better playlist to do that. Now, the main feedback and response I gave to that was like, I think realistics or a Zone War style map would have been much better than a box fighting style map, because that's where most players actually learn a lot more of the fundamentals of how to fight. But I think if the goal of that mode more is to, you know, have newer players who are better coming to build have a place to fight, I think actually box fight does work pretty well, because it is most of the fundamentals of fighting generally. So I'm not opposed to the idea by any means, but I also just thought, like, it sounds sick to have either a realistic style map or a zone while star map fit this. And, you know, again, the goal was in no way and is in no way to just replace a bunch of the other existing maps. When you play this map, you'll realize it is very, very different from Peace Control 1v1s. Right? Peace Control 1v1s are usually just like a straight tunnel, very, very small areas, where these are a little bit larger arenas that you can play from. It's clearly set up to have a good ranked mode to play tournaments on things. It's in my eyes, I don't see the existing player base of that map moving over to this map at all. It's not that similar and not that close. And again, the goal is not to just completely take all those players. It's to give players a place to fight, which I think is a fantastic idea. So yeah, it seems like they have two main visions with this. Number one, to have a place for lower level players to learn how to fight, learn how to box fight. And then number two, have another place where higher level players can actually compete, and it is going to be a ranked mode. And of course, it's also going to be in tournaments as well. Hopefully, we will see. You know, fingers crossed that they release Rank 2.0 at some point as well. I mean, it's not out right now. Unless it releases in the next 5 minutes of me recording this, I will be, you know, quite surprised. But I think with the newer ranked mode, if they, or whenever they eventually overhaul all of that, this style of map would also be way, way, way better. Massive shout out to Epic for flying me and all the others out to play this mode. It's out on the 9th, so 2 days away from now. Like the video, subscribe. Peace.